Right, hello, welcome back. If you can listen or if you can hear me, please leave a comment below. Right, hello, welcome back. If you can hear me, please leave a message on the chat so then we can get started. Right, hello, if you can hear me, please leave a message on the chat so then we can get started. If you can hear me clearly, please leave a message on the chat. Okay, excellent. Right. So what we'll do is we'll get started. So good evening, welcome back. This is in fact our first live on YouTube. So what I wanted to do is to go over paper one for the AQA exam board. So you know this paper is being sat on Monday. So Monday the 5th of June. And what I wanted to do is to literally go over the paper, and then if you have any questions you can ask me as well. So first things first, the paper is 1 hour 45, you know. For section A, the first question, as you can see, I've just brought up a past paper. You have to list 4 things, right? Now, you'd be surprised, a lot of students, including my own students, get this question wrong. So what you need to do here is literally list what you understand. For example, in this case, about Mr. Fisher. So all you have to do, in simple terms, you'd write Mr. Fisher is this, Mr. Fisher is this, Mr. Fisher is this, etc. So you don't have to provide in-depth explanation because you're wasting time. Okay, so for question 1, all you do is simply list. Okay, now a lot of students ask me, sir, can I write one-word answers? Answer is no. You can't write one-word answers. You have to write simple sentences to get the marks. And this was mentioned in the examiner's report from last year as well, that students fail to score top marks because they didn't write in full sentences. So that so we don't really I don't really see anyone sort of messing up this question. But is there any questions, anything you would like to ask in regards to question 1? If you have any questions for question 1, please let me know in the chat, and then I can answer it for you. Okay, awesome. So what we'll do is we'll move on to question 2. So question 2, now this question, you will have lines to look at. So it's always specific lines. As you can see in this past paper, it's lines 9 to 15. So what I'll... Oh, that's a shame. Okay, we're lagging for some reason. Okay, hang on. Okay, can you hear me now? Is that still lagging, or are we good to go? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with what we were talking about here. So within the insert, yeah, okay, that's fine, awesome. So within the insert, I can guarantee you on Monday, you're going to find examples of similes. You're going to find examples of metaphors. You're going to find examples of personification. And you're going to find examples of declarative sentences because these are features that are always within the insert. The exam board give you these within the insert. So what you need to do is to analyze how it's used for effect. The main focus is how is it effective. Okay, a lot of students identify the language technique, which is absolutely fine, but where you get the top marks, if you want to score the 8 out of 8, is for you to focus on the effect. So the effect on the reader and the effect of the language. Okay, so what kind of impression does it create? So for example, in this scenario, how does the writer use language here to convey Mr. Fisher's views on books and stories of the past? You could include the writer's choice of. Now, I know it says you could, but what the exam would essentially mean here is you should. Okay, you should include the writer's choice of. Number one, words and phrases. So for the first one, you could look at the use of adjectives, the use of verbs, the use of adverbs, the use of nouns. All of these things can be mentioned for the first bullet point. So you'll be writing a petal paragraph based on the first point on words and phrases. The second one, language features and techniques. So you are looking at how the writer has used similes, metaphors, personification, alliteration, rhetorical questions. So things like that you will find within the insert. And the last one is sentence forms. The easiest one you'll find, this is a top tip for you all, is a declarative sentence. A declarative sentence is a sentence which is literally a statement. It's providing a simple statement. So you will always find that within the insert as well. So in terms of paragraphs, you're looking for 2 to 3 paragraphs or 2 to 3 petal paragraphs. And in terms of timing, I would say 10 to 12 minutes at most. Okay, anything more than I think you will run out of time to finish the entire paper. So that is your question 2 language analysis. And if you would like to see a model answer, it is on my YouTube channel. So just go through the playlist and have a look at how to answer the question. Is there any particular questions or confusions you have in preparation for this question? Any questions regarding question 2? Nope. Awesome. Okay, that's fine. So that was question 2. Moving on to question 3. So to be honest, question 3 is one of my favorite questions. And to put it simply, it's how the text is organized. Okay, we've got a question. How can we analyze the effect correctly? So to answer that question, you need to look at the words that the writer uses. Okay, so the specific words that the writer uses, they use it intentionally. Okay, is it to create a sympathetic feeling towards Mr. Fisher, for example, etc. So you need to look at the specific word and you'll be able to analyze the effect of it correctly. Okay, because you'll see the word that the writer uses is actually linked to the question that they're asking. So that's how you will analyze the effect. Okay, so I hope that's answered your question there. In terms of question 3, structure is all about how the text is organized. So if I go to the insert, I'm just going to show you one of the past papers. This one you may have done in school, etc. So if I go onto the insert very quickly. So first things first, within the first paragraph, there's always certain things you want to pick out. Okay, now if we look at this example, it reads, Mr. Fisher lived alone in a small terraced house in the center of town. He did not own a car and therefore preferred to do as much as he could of his weekend marking in the form room after school. Even so, there were usually 2 or 3 stacks of books and papers to take home on the bus. So me just reading that, straight away, we know the focus is on what? What is the focus on? Can you write on the chat section? What has the writer focused on at the beginning of this insert? So you see this first paragraph that I've just read. What is the focus of it in the first paragraph? What is the writer focusing on? Exactly, it's so simple. So when you answer question 3, you'll begin the answer by saying the writer focuses on the description of Mr. Fisher and his life. Okay, so obviously we know that he's a teacher and that he's overwhelmed with marking, etc. So you need to tell us how it's interesting and how it keeps the reader engaged. Of course, it keeps the reader engaged because they want to know more about Mr. Fisher. So that will be, of course, your first and initial paragraph. Now, another important point you have to remember is that how does it shift focus, okay, from the beginning to the middle, so here, all the way to the end, okay? So you need to look out for a shift in focus. So what you need to see in simple terms is the chronology. So is there a shift in time? Is there a shift in setting? So setting his house, yeah, well done. So I can, absolutely. So you can also look at the setting which the writer is focusing on. Now, I did mention this. Most inserts will focus on one of the following. So they will either focus on number one, the setting, number two, the character, number three, dialogue. Okay, if you need to write this down because your insert on Monday for question 3, the focus at the beginning will either be on the setting, number one, number two is on the character, and number 3 is on dialogue. Okay, so that these are the potential focuses at the beginning for your insert. And often, well, not often to be fair, the writer may actually use in media res, okay, to introduce something, especially within that first paragraph. Does anyone know what in media res is? If you know, leave a comment in the chat. Okay, so set it. Okay, what's the structure introduction? Yep. So okay, we can see the message. So what's the structure introduction for the first paragraph? Right. To answer that question, yeah. So in simple terms, you are expected to write 3 paragraphs. Okay, one on the beginning, one on the middle, and one on the end. Okay. So this is how you'd structure your answer. One paragraph on the beginning, one on the middle, and one on the end. And when you write your paragraphs, you should attempt to identify the structural technique. So yes, I can see the mention of the climax. Yep. So if you look at the climax, you want to look at the position of the climax. Okay. Where does the climax fall under? Is it towards the middle or is it towards the end of the extract? So if you do mention the climax, so for example, Adam Ezidine, if you mention the climax, you need to tell us importantly, how does it interest the reader? Okay, this is what the exam board are looking for. How does it interest the reader? A lot of students identify it correctly, the structural technique, but they fail to elaborate and tell us how we interest the reader. So at the beginning of the source, then middle, then end. Yep, that's 3 paragraphs. Yes, that's correct, Adam. In media res, action. Okay, so what do you mean? Action. Immediate start from the middle. Yep, well done. Yeah, so dark lixel. Yep, that's correct. Yeah, well done. It's literally, so in media res is when they start in the middle of an action. Okay, they go straight into it. So there's an action taking place. But here we don't have in media res because we don't have an action taking place straight away. This is just an initial description and introducing us to Mr. Fisher, and we get an insight of who he is as a person, and you know, some description of his house as well. But again, in simple terms, you're looking for 3 paragraphs and roughly you should spend around 10 to 12 minutes. Now, often one thing that the exam board do, if I just scroll through it, so if I go on to, where was it? Yeah, there we go. Look, can you see on line 9, line to 10, it says, Mr. Fisher remembered a time, surely not so long ago. Look at the double dash here. Okay, you can comment on that for language. When books were golden, when imagination soared, when the world was filled with stories which ran like gazelles and pounced like tigers and exploded like rockets, illuminating minds and hearts. So if you just stop there, in terms of structure, straight away, what I can point out here on lines 9 to 10 is that the writer has used analepsis. They've used a flashback to interest the reader. Why have they used a flashback? They're showing you how Mr. Fisher's life was as a teacher. He was living this magical life where books were coming, you know, they were magical. The description was amazing. It was impeccable, right? So this is something that you should mention for question 3 structure. Now, be careful, be cautious because it's often there. Some students miss it for some strange reason, but it's an easy structural technique you can mention for question 3. And then if you look at this paragraph here, it's literally looking at how structure is used, okay? And especially analepsis. So analepsis is obviously a flashback. And then from this paragraph, if we transition to the next one, it says, now everything was in black and white. Let's stop there. So what's happened there? Can anyone comment what's happened from the previous paragraph, so the one I'm pointing at, to this one? What's happened here? Can anyone tell us what's happened in terms of structure? Good. Okay. Okay. Shift in time. That's correct. Because if you look, well, there's two actually. There's a shift in time. If you mention that, you'll get marks, but also a shift in tense as well. Remembered a time. Okay. Surely not so long ago when books were golden, when imagination soared. Okay. When the world was filled with stories which ran like gazelles. So this is all in past tense. He had seen it happen, had seen whole classes swept away in the fever. In those days, they were dot dot dot. So that is the past tense. Now it shifts the focus to the present tense. Can you see? Now everything was in black and white. Okay. So it shows you the shift in focus. And you need to tell us, how is that interesting the reader? Why is this interesting? So yes, well done, Adam, and meditation and relaxation. That is correct. So shift in time, shift in focus, they go hand in hand. So they do overlap. Now, who can tell us why does that interest the reader? So, especially in regards to Mr. Fisher, why is that interesting? Remember, everything you mention on Monday, link it back to how it interests the reader. So, who can tell us? So, why has the writer shifted the focus from this paragraph to this one? What does it show? Have a go and then we can discuss it. Even if you're wrong, that's completely fine because we can go over the answer. Flashback. Okay, not entirely. So what's happening here? The reason why the writer has shifted focus from the past to the present is to show the contrast in Mr. Fisher's life. He's reminiscing, okay? He's thinking about the good old days, how it was, it was enjoyable. He genuinely enjoyed being a teacher because of the descriptions, because of the students' imagination. Now, the shift back to the present tense shows you the disparity. What's happening now is that students' imaginations are terrible, and it lacks, and their imagination is completely futile, and it's something that has put Mr. Fisher off. And for that reason, he's lost interest towards teaching. He's lost that spark for teaching. Okay, so I hope that makes sense in terms of my explanation. And then the next paragraph, okay, again, you'll see there's a gradual shift, okay, from each paragraph to one another. It says, Mr. Fisher took a deep breath and looked at Tibbet's exercise book. Trying not to think of the snow outside and the 5 o'clock bus he was now almost certain to miss. 4 books to go, he told himself, and then home, dinner, bed, the comforting small routine of a winter weekend. So here, we have the introduction. Well, actually, if I go previously, I think I skipped the previous paragraph. Sorry. So this was an uncharacteristically gloomy train of thought, and Mr. Fisher pushed it away. Not all his boys lacked imagination. Alistair Tibbet, for instance, even though he had obviously done part of his homework on the bus, an amiable boy, this Tibbet. Not a brilliant scholar by any means, but there was a spark in him which deserved attention. Now, what structural technique is being used here? Who can tell us? From the previous paragraph to this one, what structural technique for question 3 has the writer used? Okay, so the shift in tense is effective as it makes the reader interested in learning about Mr. Fisher's past. Absolutely, yeah, that's correct. Well done. So again, it builds curiosity because we start to question how was his life. Okay, zoom out. It's not really zoom out. It's actually zooming in because it's going from his students in the past now to the specific student. Okay, so this is actually zooming in. Okay, so the attention focuses on Alistair Tibbet. So when you make this point, you'll say, additionally, the writer shifts the focus to the student Alistair Tibbet, and this interests the reader as we get to have an insight of a student who sparks Mr. Fisher's imagination, Mr. Fisher's teaching. Okay, so that's something that you'd want to mention. So Alistair Tibbet, if you were to mention that point for structure, you need to talk about zooming in. Okay, so the writer zooms into Alistair Tibbet and tell us how that interests the reader. The reason it interests the reader is because look here, what do they say? An amiable boy, this Tibet. What does amiable mean? Who knows? An amiable boy. Yep, well done, thank you. Excellent. Great discussions. Well done, everyone. So, what do they mean by an amiable boy, this Tibet? So, as you can see here, does anyone know what amiable means? Clever. No, amiable just means likable. Okay, so what's happening here is that there's this spark because of Alistair Tibbet. Remember, Mr. Fisher, he's lost interest for teaching because if you look at the previous paragraph, so if I just scroll back, do you remember everything was in black and white? Okay, so what this means essentially is that the student's imagination was poor. Okay, and for that reason he was losing interest. Okay, so if you think about it as a teacher, you know, you've been teaching for a long time, but you know, recently you realize a lot of your students are lacking imagination, so naturally when you read their answers you're not going to be as interested. But suddenly, look what happened. The writer zooms into a particular character by the name Alistair Tibbet and tells us how he's an amiable boy. Okay, not a brilliant scholar by any means, but there was a spark in him which deserved attention. That's important. That interests the reader because why? The reason it makes it interesting for the reader is because we start to feel optimistic about Mr. Fisher and his career as a teacher. Because all these weeks and months, he's been frustrated by these poor sort of writing answers or creative writing. But suddenly, Alistair Tibbet has brought this new sense of hope, okay, this new, you know, breath of fresh air. So that's something that's happening towards the middle. And then towards the end, okay, you always need to comment. Please make sure on Monday you comment on the end as well, because the question is about the whole source, okay? So it says, if anyone had asked him what Tibbet's story was about, Mr. Fisher might have been hard put to reply. There were themes he recognized, elements of plot which were vaguely familiar, an adventure, a quest, a child, a man. But to explain Tibbet's story in these terms was as meaningless as trying to describe a loved one's face in terms of nose, eyes, mouth. This was something new, something entirely original. Look at the ending, okay? This is a declarative sentence. The writer has ended with a declarative sentence. And it shows you, okay, if you compare it to the beginning, his hope and his determination has finally paid off because he was almost giving up as a teacher. If you remember looking at the text, he's been teaching for a long time. I believe it says like 40 years or something. So what's happened towards the end is that the readers, alongside Mr. Fisher, of course, are optimistic because they realize Alistair Tibbet, so Tibbet's story is what sparked his interest. And it was something new, something entirely original. Okay. So essentially, what you'd say towards the end of your paragraph is that Alistair Tibbet's answer had revived Mr. Fisher's teaching career. That's how impactful it was. So that's what interests the reader. Okay. And absolutely, yes, Adam, short sentences, that is correct. So look at the impact of the short sentences and think about the tone. What kind of tone does it create? It creates an optimistic tone. You need to mention this for question 3. Towards the end, there's an optimistic tone used by the writer to interest us as the reader. And as the reader, we feel admired. Okay, we admire his efforts. We acknowledge and appreciate his efforts. Okay. So that is question 3 covered for you. And literally, as you can see, it's not that difficult. You need to make sure you learn and understand all the structural techniques. If you're not sure what they are, I have done a YouTube video on it, on how to answer the question for question 3. There's also a model answer on my YouTube channel. Okay, and then we have... Okay, repetition of something creates a sense of optimism. Yeah, well done, absolutely. Great comment. Can you use body language as structure? What do you mean? Can you use body language? Lively. Okay, can you use body... can you elaborate? What do you mean by can you use body language? Are you referring to the insert? Can you use body language? I don't understand that question. So can you elaborate and be specific so I can answer that question? Okay, right. Okay, that's fine. So that was question 3 for you all. So essentially, remember, yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay, so if you're talking about body language, yes, as long as you can make that link to how it interests the reader, then yes, for sure, you can make that comment. Yeah. So does that make sense? As long as you can link it with how it interests the reader, as you can see, that's the main focus, dark Lixel, then that's completely fine. Okay, but remember, students, your main focus for this question, as you can see, what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning. So I've told you at the beginning of this live stream, often the writer focuses on the following at the beginning. Number 1 is the setting, number 2 is the character, number 3 is the dialogue. Okay, secondly, how and why the writer changes its focus as the source develops. The how is obviously the structural technique. Okay, so you need to comment on that and tell us how it interests the reader. And finally, any other structural features that interest you. So, for example, chronology. Is it written in time order? These are things that also get you marks. These are structural features. Secondly, you can look at the use of linear structure. Is it written in time order? And is it consistent? Is it written from the early hours of the morning all the way to the afternoon to the evening? So to those of you who did the Alexander Code text, you'd see that the writer in fact does use a linear structure, and also dialogue. So things like dialogue, flashback, flash forward, a one sentence paragraph. Students, why do you think the writer uses a one sentence paragraph? Who can tell us in the comment section? Why does the writer, so if I go to, I'm not sure if they've used it here. No, they haven't used it here, but often what they do in the insert is use a one sentence paragraph. Excellent. Well done. Yes. Shift focus or spotlight. Well done. Meditation and relaxation music channel. Yes, that is correct. So in simple terms, okay, make sure you keep your eyes peeled, because on Monday, there's a possibility you'll see a one sentence paragraph, and you already know that can be one of your paragraphs. Okay. And what I say to all my students, the more points you make, the more marks you're likely to pick up. So the one sentence paragraph for structure, it shows you a shift in focus. Okay. So obviously there's a shift in focus from the previous paragraph. Okay. And that takes us towards the end of question 3, to be honest. I hope you all found this beneficial. Create suspense. Yeah, of course. But that is subject to what is mentioned within that sentence. Okay. So that takes us towards the end of question 3. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to end it here because I've had a long day of teaching and working as well, but I will continue tomorrow. I hope you found this live beneficial. This was like our first live, to be fair, so I hope you found this beneficial. Let me know your thoughts on the chat section, how you found this live. Was it beneficial? Did you learn something? And is there something that you can apply in your exam for Monday? What time tomorrow? Okay, so for tomorrow, so I've got bookings, so teaching online. So I finish really late, so 9:30, but hopefully by 10. So I'm planning to do these lives every day from 10 o'clock to 10:30. Okay, maybe slightly longer, to be fair. But what I would like you to do is to share it with all your friends, because I am going to go over the entire paper, give you some top tips and answer all your questions. Okay, and show you my model answers and question 5 as well, how to ace question 5. So share it with your friends and tell them all to join, because the more people, the better the video can be. So yeah, thank you all for joining, and I appreciate it. How did you all find this live? Let me know in the comment section. How did you find today's live? Did you find it beneficial? Did you learn something? Do you feel more confident with question 3 structure? Excellent, thank you. So that's great to hear from you all. Brilliant, excellent. So I hope I can bring value to your revision. And again, these live streams will allow you to obviously ask me live Q&As. And it's something which is unique because if you think about it, in school, you just see your teacher in class and that's it. But here you'll be able to ask many questions as well. So tomorrow the plan is to go over question 4 evaluation. So I'm planning to start at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Do let your friends know and then we will go over it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go over question 4 tomorrow. I'm going to show you my model answer. And I'll show you how to score 20 out of 20. Now, remember, a lot of students struggle with this question, but hopefully by the end of tomorrow's live, you'll have a better understanding. So, goes towards okay. So what we're going to do is we'll end it here. Thank you for attending, and I shall see you all tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.